Welcome to another episode of the Peak Potential Success Show. My name is Fong. I'm an entrepreneur, business strategist, real estate investor, speaker, and also a best-selling author. And every single day, I help others unlock potentials and guide them to succeed. Today on the show, we have another fascinating guest. On this show, we interview celebrities, entrepreneurs, business CEOs, athletes, and artists to find out their path to success, how they're able to overcome challenges and adversity, and of course, their keys to success. And today's guest is somebody who's been helping a lot of individuals, businesses, companies achieve great success, generate more revenue, grow, and become more and more successful as they work with her. She has over 25 plus years of consulting, working with over 1,000 plus companies, from startups to Fortune 1000 companies, helping them build sustainable revenue generating strategies, which is of course very important. She comes highly recommended by others, so I'm very excited to have her on my show. She is also the best-selling author of the book Dare to Become, which showcases the importance of resiliency in achieving success, and I'm sure we can touch on that as well. Later on, she is the founder of the company Junction Creative, which is an award-winning strategic marketing agency, combining her skill sets of business consulting and, of course, the creative mindset of advertising and marketing as well, helping companies grow, achieve more success, and generating more income. So please welcome best-selling author, CEO, entrepreneur, business leader, Ms. Julie CROPP GARELECK.
Thank you for having me, and what a great intro.
Well, thank you very much for being here. Thanks for spending some time with us. And I'm sure lots of people would be very interested to know about how did you become who you are today? Like, did you come out of school and go, you know what, I'm going to impact the world and help all these companies? How did you get to where you are?
Yeah, it's such an interesting story, right? So if you'd asked me, when I was in college, I was going to come out, I was going to be a reporter. I wanted to be on the news. I wanted to be Barbara Walters. And so growing up, that was really my career path. But as a teenager, my parents took a leap of faith and invested in themselves. They bought a restaurant, and I grew up in a family business, learning how, businesses operate at a very young age. And so when I came out of college, I swore to my parents I would never go into business. It just was too much work. I wasn't going to do it. And lo and behold, it's the exact thing that I've spent the last 24 years or 25 years doing. So, so it was one of those things where once I came out of college, I did work in international PR for a small period of time and then moved to Philadelphia, where I worked for an entrepreneurship institute. So my first job out of the gate was working with startup entrepreneurs who were working on feasibility studies and business plans and trying to find funding. So that path it just sort of led me there. And again, if you'd asked me like what I thought I thought I would be a journalist and writing for a newspaper, but literally have navigated strategy and business strategy for the last 2 decades.
That is awesome. I mean, from the very early age, you wanted to be a person who writes, who
Yes.
reports, who's on camera, which then led to today. Like you write, you're on camera, you report.
Yes.
So it all fits in very well. Can you
Yeah.
imagine your life now if you did not have any of that restaurant background?
I really can't. I mean, even the motivation for writing my book was the fact that, as I was progressing in my career, I realized that I was a little bit further ahead than maybe somebody else my age because I'd had that foundation, right? I mean, I understood what it meant to work 12 hours a day, to be responsible and accountable for real things, right? But, responsibility for managing others. I mean, I was 20, 21 when I was helping manage people who were 10, 15, 20 years older than I was. And there aren't many 20-year-olds that get that experience that young. And so I definitely attribute my career path to what I learned there. And I don't know that my career would have taken this path if I wasn't exposed to that at such a young age.
There's a lot of kids out there who is in a family of like restaurants and business and all that kind of stuff who go, after school, all I can do is go back to the restaurant, serve, and they work another 4 or 5 hours because it's the
Yeah,
family business. Now,
exactly.
what can you tell these kids to look forward to? It's hard now. Yes, they may miss out on going to mall or hanging out with friends and all that kind of stuff, but does the end justify the means?
Oh, 100%. What I would say is that while it might seem hard to work with your family and it might seem like it's a bigger load to carry, right? Just because it is the family business, if you allow yourself to learn as much as you can, you will see the results of what they're teaching, not in 20 years. You're going to see it in a couple of years. You're going to see it when you face your first job out of college and somebody is like, oh, your family owned a restaurant. Oh, you worked in a restaurant. And they say to you, oh, then you know how to work hard, right? I mean, it will come much faster than you think, but use those opportunities to grow your skill set, even though maybe it's not the professional path that you're going down. There's so much that you can learn from that experience that is so critical when you get into these professional, whether it's a corporate environment or a small business environment.
Now, you've made the transition from family business to opening up your own
Yeah.
agency and doing your own consulting work and all that kind of stuff. Now, lots of kids who work in a family business believe that, you know what, this is my life. I'm going to eventually take over this business, and this is what I'm going to be doing for the rest of my why am I even venturing out of that area?
Mhm.
For you, was that thought process difficult for you to make that decision and go, okay, you know what? Yeah, this is great. I love it. I know it's something that my parents spend a lot of time on, but it's time for me to kind of create my own path. How did you come
Yeah,
to that decision?
yeah, I think I think there's like that part of me that felt guilty because that wasn't the path I wanted. I didn't want to run the restaurant and stay where I was. I wanted to go kind of, chart my own path and experience my own things. And what my parents were really great at doing is that they made us feel like we were such a big part of the growth of the restaurant. And they really gave us these incredible insights. And when we both, my sister and I both, said, hey, here's kind of what we want to do. Here's where we want to go. They supported that. And when it came time for my parents to sell the restaurant, they did ask if it was something that we wanted to buy from them. And we did not. But the best part of the story is that one of our employees who started when he was 14 years old had worked at the restaurant for over 10 years. He ended up buying it from my parents. So there was somebody that it basically went to one of our own, right? Even though not like technically family, but still part of the Avenue Restaurant family. And so it was difficult, but my parents were also like, no, you need to chart your own course. You need to find out what it is that you want to do. And I'm so grateful that they were supportive because in some family businesses, it's an expectation, it's not a choice, but I never felt like I couldn't make my own choice.
Mhm. It must be nice to have it somewhat within the family still. Like you can still go back and still feels like home because
Yes.
everybody there is people that you know.
Yeah.
Now, when you made that transition into consulting,
Mhm.
what made you think this is your path? Like, what did you have experiences with helping others kind of on the side and then go, you know what, I could make this change, or did you just jump right into it?
So I think early in my career, when I worked in sort of the entrepreneurship space, I worked for a venture capital organization. I loved learning about different industries. I loved reading different business plans, marketing models, financial strategies. So I actually really learned quite a bit. When I moved to Atlanta, when I met my husband, that climate didn't exist in Atlanta, Georgia, as it did in the Northeast. So I actually pivoted and started working for ad agencies. And so I don't think that I will tell you this, I didn't have it fully baked out, but I do think that I was seeing things in different organizations that were not working properly, that were not being managed properly. And I just thought to myself, you know what? Like, I actually know how to do this. And when I took that leap of faith, I was investing in my own skill sets. I knew what I was capable of. Now, was I perfect at it? No. Um, but I do think that there was just this underpinning of like, I will have my own company one day. I just didn't know what it was going to be until the moment I made that decision.
Very, very cool. Now, you work with a lot of different companies from different levels and experience and whatnot.
Mhm.
Are you able to kind of pinpoint some of the most common, let's say, no-nos or common mistakes that people do when they're in the startups or when they're in their mid-size and versus the Fortune 1000 ones? Like,
Yeah.
what are they usually missing at those stages, and what can they do to mitigate that?
Yeah, I think, and looking at a lot of the startups that I've worked with, I think that one of the biggest hurdles they face is the funding challenge. And I will say that they could have a really great technology, they could have a really good product or service, but they get a ton of funding, and then the funding gets spent in ways that probably isn't the most either responsible or the most sustainable. And so, what we see, or what I've seen, is that for those startups who are going out and getting funding from whether it's a financial institution, friends, family, and other, or maybe you're bootstrapping it with your own cash, which is what I did. It's really, really critical to understand how you're going to make money, not just how you're going to put together a really great set of projections. And so that's where I would encourage people to not get too excited about what the projections say, but get excited about the sales that you're actually receiving, right? I think that's kind of the biggest area that I see for a lot of startups. And for mid-sized companies, I do see that as companies grow, there is less focus on process and efficiency because they are, trying to hire and grow into those new accounts. And a lot of times what can happen is they're losing profit, not because they're not doing a great job, but because they're losing track of time and money, right? And people and where they're spending their time. So typically at the mid-size level, it's more of an operational discussion, like how can you get this more efficient, as opposed to needing more money. And then on the Fortune 1000 side, I will tell you, these companies they're big and they have a lot of employees and they have a lot of requirements. And so a lot of times we fit in to help their existing team with areas that they can't get to. And I think it's just because of size, right? Like, they have a big team, but they still need that extra resource that has a highly specialized skill set. So it is different at each stage.
Awesome. Well, you mentioned funding is one of the biggest hurdles that startups have. And there's a lot of people out there who have startups who's looking at more funding and talking to investors, talking to people to come up with that funding. And they come up with packages of information and numbers and charts and all that kind of stuff. What would you recommend people have prepared for hey, let's get you interested and then we'll show you all the details? Because sometimes once you show all the details, people just get completely zoned out. How
Yeah.
much information should a person have prepared to get that person to get somebody interested? Or what
Yeah.
can they do to get people interested?
Yeah, look, I mean, when you're approaching an investor or an investment group, like don't go at them with a 50-page PowerPoint, right? You need to be able to boil down who you are, what you do, how you're going to do it, how you're going to make money, and how you're going to pay them back, right? So you got to get that into 10 to 12 slides. Don't walk them down a technical rabbit hole on the technical specifications for your, widget or whatever that may be, right? Give them the high level, but also show them how you are going to make money. And hopefully you're already making money and how you're going to be able to provide them a return. That is what they are looking for. When they're looking at it, a lot of people think that, hey, I've got a life-changing technology. Everyone's going to want to buy it. If they can't get to the path of profitability where they're getting the returns they're looking for, you've spent too much time educating them on why this is like a life-changing product, right? So that would be the first thing I would say. The other thing I would say is don't wait to test the market until you have the funding. If you can, take your product to market, take the first version of your product to market, show them that you can get sales, because this is one of those areas where if you're a pure startup and you don't have proof of concept, it's going to take you a lot longer to get those folks to invest in you. So don't be afraid to test it. Even if you do it on a smaller scale than you want, show them that you can make money with that product or service.
No, I know this is probably a loaded question, but at what point would you say a person's idea is, let's say, their passion project, they're very attached to it emotionally, versus something that, you know what, it's not gonna work? Like, when do they cross that line and go, okay, maybe I have to go a different path?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. And I will tell you, it isn't like a certain period of time. I can't say it's 12 months. I can't say it's 18 months. What I can say is that, if you do have a product or service and you've taken it to market and you've marketed it, and I mean marketed it, not just opened up an online store and expected people to follow. If you have actually given it a good shot, in 2 years, you still aren't like generating revenue to support yourself or the business, it might be time to either retool the product or retool the service or take a look at why it isn't selling, right? You have to have those honest conversations with yourself. I mean, I will say, even in my own business, I wasn't turning the type of profit that I wanted for 18 months, right? It took that long for me to establish my company, for me to establish some relationships and start generating revenue. So I wouldn't say don't stop if it's 18 months and you're like, oh gosh, don't give up. But I will tell you, if you are not able to generate any income, You have to have that conversation with yourself and say, it might not be other people, it might actually be the product or the service that you're offering.
Right. And because there's so much that one needs to do to really market their services and their products. And there's a lot of hurdles that people go through. Getting that startup going is one of the most difficult things for people to do if that's the choice that they want to make.
Mhm.
At, how do you face and overcome those challenges, those fears, those naysayers, that internal mindset that goes, you know what, it's not gonna work. You're trying too hard. Just spend some time at home, all that kind of stuff. How do you go over that and keep on pushing?
Yeah, no, it's funny. It's funny you say that because I always laugh. I could talk myself in or out of anything depending on how I feel that day, right? So, so what I will say is that, being a business owner, being an entrepreneur is incredibly difficult. I think that sometimes technology glamorizes it and makes it sound like everybody's doing it and it's so easy. But what I will tell you is success does not come easy, right? And it will be difficult. And there will be days that you question your choices, you will question your capability, but you have to be able to quiet the noise in your mind and focus, right? And just there will be bad days, but you know what? Have a bad day, be upset about it, but then keep moving forward. And if you keep moving forward and you keep focused on the end goal, you will get to the other side. But there will be days that you can't quiet the mind, right? I still have those days, even though I've been in business for 15 years for myself. I still have those days, but you do have to have that resilience to just keep moving in the direction that you're wanting to go.
It's funny how you say that sometimes people think it's so easy. I mean,
Yeah.
I've heard people go, what? This video just got millions of views. I could
Uh-huh.
cook better than that. All I need to do is record this, post it up, and I'm golden. I'm like, it might not be that easy. And then you
It's
start
not.
explaining to them, like, the thumbnail needs to be like this, and you might have to have reels, you have to drive traffic, blah, 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 and it just goes over their head. So I just need to post it, right?
Right. And I will say too, and I think that's what's also irresponsible for a lot of folks that are maybe selling services to say, look, I can create this video and you're going to be a millionaire. Like, don't buy into that, right? Like, it takes money to make money. It takes hard work to have success. And there is no magic bullet. If there was, trust me, I would take that and I would build whatever business that was. And I haven't found it yet. So if it's out there, somebody please tell me where it is.
You mentioned that you could talk yourself in or out of anything depending on your mood.
Yes.
So I
Yes.
would imagine that you try to keep yourself in the best mood as possible for as long as possible and as often as possible.
Yes,
What do you
it's
do to do that?
yeah, I mean, look, I think by nature I'm a naturally peppy person. I've been it's funny, I write about this in the book. Someone had said to me, "Julie, you're almost like a cheerleader at a funeral. Like you just wake up and you're happy." And the reality is I look at kind of out in front of me that my glass is always full, right? It's not half empty, it's not half full. It's full. It's just to a varying degree. And so what I really try to do is I try to do things that make me feel good. So in the morning, I set my intention for the day, right? I spend 10 minutes going, what do I want to accomplish today? And how do I want to feel at the end of the day, right? It's just 10 minutes, but in that 10 minutes, it's almost like I give myself that pep talk of like, hey, here's how we're going to get through it. And then at the end of the day, when I'm done, working for a majority of the day, I go work out and I work out for an hour, sometimes an hour and a half until I feel grounded and settled and have worked through whatever issues I was dealing with. And 9 times out of 10, if I go running, I've solved 3 problems by the time I've gotten back. So those healthy habits keep me grounded. And on those bad days, are tools that help me work through that, right? Because not every day is a good day. And I would love to tell you I'm this peppy every day. I mean, I am for the most part, but you have to, it's a conscious effort, right? To look at things from a positive perspective.
I just have this weird mental image. Once you said cheerleader at a funeral, I'm like you're like bouncing around, running around. Everybody's like, "Come on, awkward, read a room."
I know. I know. I mean, I don't really act like that at real funerals, but I will say that sometimes people are like, "Oh gosh, do you ever have a bad day?" And the reality is I do have a bad day. But if I sit and focus on the negative and I sit and focus on what I don't like or that something didn't go my way, I will never get anything done, right? How will I get forward if I allow that to stop me from making progress?
So how do you bring yourself out of that?
Yeah, just like a lot of, I surround myself by, I've got a small group of people who are in my kind of inner circle.
Mhm.
And, I call them, I draw, positivity from them, from my children. I have two beautiful girls. And believe it or not, just 2 days ago, I missed the USA Today bestsellers list in my first week. And I was so bummed. And my 9-year-old looks at me and says, Mommy, you wrote a book and you made number one on 4 lists. Like, why are you upset? And it was in that moment that I was like, oh my goodness, right? Like, just like talk to a child because their perspective is like, this is amazing. And so I just surround myself by people that feed that positivity and that can pull me out of those moments when maybe I'm not feeling as good about myself as I should.
Mhm. You mentioned a few times about your book, Dare to Become,
Yeah.
and you've made bestseller. You've come in number one in many lists.
Yeah.
Congratulations on that. It's very, very
Thank
exciting.
you.
What got you to get that book out there? What was the reason for you to go, you know what, I'm going to put pen to paper. I'm going to put my fingers to the keyboard and start typing. Because I know a lot of people goes, I have a message. I have something to share. I have value to put out there. But the thought and the actual action of doing it stops them. Like for some reason, they just can't translate it over. What made you
Yeah.
make that decision?
Yeah, I mean, and I would tell you, I probably started this book 10 times, like 4 years prior to writing it. But I had reached 13 years in business. I had accomplished some milestones. But funny enough, rather than being elated and excited and happy, I felt stuck. And I kind of felt like, oh gosh, like, what's next? Like what is supposed to come next? And so I was looking for content to help kind of pull me out of this place. I mean, nothing bad had happened. I just felt stuck and it worried me because I don't normally feel stuck. And so I started flipping through journals that I've written from the age of 13 all the way till now. And as I was reading through the journals from working for my parents and when I started my career and when I was experiencing different things throughout my career, I looked back and I was like, oh my gosh, like I was fearless when I was 21. I thought the world was my oyster and if I worked hard, I could have what I wanted. And I think sometimes like as we work and as the years go by, you become hardened and you forget, right, that you are doing the very things that you set out for yourself. And so in the process of looking back, I actually found the words to write the book. And I share a lot of those stories in the book that were in those journals. And it kind of just like I shook it off and went, oh my gosh, look at how far you've come, right? Like I'm so hard on myself on any given day, but if you read what that 16-year-old wrote about what I wanted for my life and I've actually accomplished it, it's a pretty humbling moment, right? Where you're like, oh gosh, like I've completely lost sight of right of the good side of it. And so I wrote Dare to Become because I really do want to just inspire others who are either business owners or entrepreneurs or just looking for a little bit of hope, right? I think as business owners, it's hard and sometimes we want to know that somebody else is going through the same things we're going through.
And it's probably a great way of having you kind of recollect all those thoughts again. And sometimes if
Yeah.
you need it, you could go back and read it yourself and go, oh yeah, I do remember.
100%. Yes. Yes.
You mentioned you have two girls, and I'm assuming they're going to be aspired to become an entrepreneur and a businesswoman and achieve great things.
Yeah.
How do you kind of navigate through that path? Because schooling is schooling,
Yes.
business is completely different than what school teaches.
Yeah.
So do you organize certain exercises or take them on special trips and stuff like that, or bring them to your work and kind of
Mhm.
go, this is what I do? How do you kind of balance that education for them?
Yeah, it's a great question. I will tell you. So, my husband is also an entrepreneur. He's been an entrepreneur for a long time, has multiple businesses. And so, when our kids ask us questions about, Mommy, why do you do this? Or what does this mean? What does it mean to have an employee? What does it mean to, I don't know, what is revenue, right? What is profit, right? Like, my husband and I, probably because we're such nerds about business and we love it, that we just transfer that knowledge to the kids and we don't shy away from explaining things to them. Some of the concepts they don't understand, but they love coming into my office. They love, helping organize the snack containers or something like that because they feel like they're doing something. And I do think it's important because as I look back, my parents really opened up the door and shared a ton with us. And My kids are much younger, right? But I do find that they are picking up those pieces. And so, they have certain chores that they make money and they're like, we could get a business card and do this for everyone in the neighborhood. And I'm like, exactly. So they get sort of the cause and effect, whether they become business owners or not, as long as they're happy in their profession, but they are learning from us. And that's really, I'm very proud of that because my girls see both my husband and I working really hard and they understand why we work so hard.
Is there a future where you drop them off at that restaurant and have them work there?
They've actually eaten there. So yes, so the restaurant still exists. And when we're in Gettysburg, they go in there. They know that Grammy and Pappy, this was their restaurant, and they love it, right? They're excited because that's like a part of our history. So they love going there, and the food's still good. So yeah,
One day, what I'm thinking is you drive there to, yay, we're going there to eat, and you stop, you drop them off. See ya. You're working a
exactly.
12-hour shift. We'll be back.
Exactly, right? Oh no, look, I truly believe that every single individual on this earth should work in a restaurant or a service-based business before they enter into the workforce. And so my children will. They might not thank me for it, but I will tell you what, it is such an incredible experience and everybody should go through it at some point in their life.
Yeah, it's tough. I
Yes.
had one shift at a Wetzel's Pretzels once, and I'm like, I'm never doing this again.
Yeah,
I was not
it's the
enjoying
hardest
that shift.
job. It's so hard, right? You're constantly serving people. You're working in like, crazy busy conditions, but it is so important because it gives you a greater appreciation, I think, as you grow in your career, but it also gives you exposure to all different types of situations where you can learn from.
That's totally true. So you're a writer, you're a consultant, you help lots of people achieve success, which usually translate to you becoming a speaker, being on podcasts, speaking on large stages.
Yeah.
How was that transition for you? Was it something that was easy or something that you go, I need to work on this, I need to be more comfortable on stages? What was that like?
Yeah, so I mean, I still run Junction Creative, my agency, so I still run that. But yeah, as I was putting the book out, I knew that I had to build my personal brand, right? Because, publishers and agents don't look at you unless you have one. And then also when you're putting a book out, one that I want a lot of people to read, they really have to be able to identify. So I will say that, the transition has not been too difficult in terms of knowing what I want to do. So I do want to speak. I do want to share, the themes in the book. We have created some training modules that would work for companies to help motivate their workforce and things like that. But it takes a lot of time and effort. And I will say for me, I think it was a bit harder because it's more vulnerable, right? Like I'm talking about my experiences. I'm sharing my life with the world. And while I've gotten great initial feedback, I know there will be people that don't take it the way it was meant. And so it was, I think, a much harder for me because it was more personal. Whereas the agency, even though, yes, that's very personal to me, it wasn't me personally, right? So it's very different. But I'm excited. It's been a great ride so far.
Mhm. Now, I know for somebody who's in this field of consulting, helping people achieve success, usually they're the product of the product. They too are surrounded by people that help them, mentor them, coach them. What are some of the biggest and most aha aspiring advices that you've gotten from your mentors or your coaches?
My favorite one, I talk about this often. So there was a time where I was like complaining about something at work. It wasn't going my way. And I was at the top of the organization at the time. And I was just, just not being grateful and was just venting. And my father, actually, who's one of my earlier mentors, my parents are, he said to me, he goes, Julie, look, as a leader, you've taken the step to stand out in front. You will always have a target on your back, always, right? And so as those darts are coming, you're either going to dodge them as you go or you're going to take some hits as you go. But that is the choice that you've made by standing out in front. So just remember that when someone gets you or hits your target, just straighten it and keep moving forward. And honestly, on those days where I want to give up because I feel like there's been too many darts being thrown, I realize that this is a choice that I've made. I've made the choice to do this. And so I always sort of envision this little
Right.
dartboard on my back, like a backpack, right? But the other piece of advice I had from a mentor from my first boss in Philadelphia is, he really stressed the importance of listening first and learning before choosing to respond. And it wasn't like, don't be seen, don't speak. It wasn't that way. It was that if you really want to be part of the conversation, you have to listen. Just listen. Don't listen to respond. Listen, learn. And then when you have something valuable to contribute, that is when people are going to notice you. And so I just felt like that lesson, I still do that, right? I mean, I still make sure that I'm listening, not to respond back so I sound smart or have something to say. I listen first because when I do speak, people do hear what I have to say. So that's another incredible lesson that I've learned.
It's nice that you mentioned listening and how important that is, because I think in today's day and age with social media, all the content that's out there, lots of people don't spend the time to really listen to at least the context or what's really, they read the headlines and
Yes.
they get sucked into the headline and goes, well, that must be true. And
Mhm.
they form this mindset of what's going on, and they have all these opinions, they have all these emotions, and they just blurt it all out without really understand what's there, without really listening.
Exactly.
With you in the agency of helping people with their advertising, with their marketing, well,
Yeah.
getting people to catch their eye and pay attention, but also wanting to send that message to them so that they actually understand is very, very
Correct.
difficult.
It
So
is.
how do you toe that line? Because you might overstep it and maybe insult people and maybe become canceled, but you want to be able to shock them enough to get them to pay attention. So how do
Yeah.
you play that card?
So you bring up something interesting. I'm actually glad you brought this up. So if you have fully defined who you're targeting, so you know exactly who you're targeting, you know what influences their purchase decisions, right? Or their engagement decisions, right? And this is all stuff we know because digital and analytics all provides us with this type of information. If we know that, you should never be creating content that offends anyone because you understand who you're trying to target. And so I think a lot of times when people get canceled or people, want to have a shocking message, they're losing sight of what their customers are actually looking for. And that shock value isn't really about your customer. It's about wanting to be cool and creative and do something that no one else has done. And maybe that worked 30 years ago, but in today's environment, as I'm sure you know, users are very specific about the types of things that they like to see online. And so, what I would tell you is if it feels like it might be wrong, it probably is, right? And remember that you don't have to come forward with such a big message, but if you are consistently executing messages that resonate with where they are in their life, whether they're looking for a home or maybe they're wanting to purchase a car or maybe they're looking for professional services for something, speak to them where they are and speak to them in a way that it's going to resonate with them and save all of the creative stuff for maybe some personal projects or projects that your agency wants to work on. Because I've seen a lot of that happen where they get so bought into a creative idea that they lose sight of how their customers are going to receive those messages.
I love how you mentioned that if you know your demographic, if you know your clients, then what you put out there will probably resonate with them.
Yes,
However, the people that you insult or yeah, who you insult are usually not your customers. It's those
correct.
people that kind of, they're passing by, go, what? I saw this on my feed, or I saw this, I heard
Yes,
overheard this. How do you how do you mitigate that? Because it's that one person
it
who
is.
doesn't care anyways that goes, you know
Yes.
what, taking it completely out of context and goes out there and ruins it for everybody. So how do you
Well,
play with that person?
it's very difficult. I will tell you, it is difficult. And I will say to you, with technology today and all of the digital social platforms that we have essentially given every single person in the world access
Yeah.
to air their grievances at any time for any reason based on whatever mood they're in at that moment, which is very risky, right? So what I will tell you is you're never going to 100% meet the expectations of every user. If you do get someone that does comment or that does find offense or that is using this, you know what? Reach out and communicate with that person. This is the one thing that brands forget to do is that while they may not be your customer, pick up the phone. Don't send them a chat through X. Don't send them a chat through Facebook. Get their email, get their phone number, call them and say, and just explain to them that that wasn't the intent or that they apologize for it being perceived that way and they appreciate and they will take that feedback to heart. Sometimes that type of authentic communication is enough to diffuse the spiral, right? And if you say nothing, and you do nothing, then it's just going to continue to take on a life of its own. So I know for some big brands, it's really hard to quell the 5 million likes and follows. But I will say, if you look back in the history of branding debacles or branding challenges, no one from that branding team picked up the phone and called the person who was upset and said, my gosh, we didn't mean it that way. We're sorry, right? Sometimes just taking accountability is enough.
Very, very well said. And I think sometimes it shocks the person who first put it out there. It's like, oh,
Yes.
nobody's ever contacted me on this, and I just feel ignored. And no, maybe you convert them over to becoming
Right.
a client.
Exactly. Right. And I think sometimes there's a quote that says that like 97% of all miscommun or all like issues or challenges are derived from miscommunication. And especially in the marketing space, right? What might make sense to you and I might not make sense to somebody where this isn't relevant to them. And so we just have to remember that we are all different. We are all viewing messages differently, but I don't think we need to move away though from having a conversation and not being afraid to say, gosh, we're really sorry, didn't mean it that way, but hey, we'll be more mindful in the future. Like it's not saying you can never do it again, but it's also just acknowledging the fact that maybe there's a group or groups of people that are unhappy, but do something. Don't do nothing. Doing nothing is a recipe for disaster.
Very, very well said. I got one final formal question for you, and that is we
Yeah.
put you on the world stage, and you have a couple minutes to share with the world one main message that you want everybody to remember Julie for. What would that be?
One main message to remember me by. Well, I would say, look, if I look back on my career and I look back on writing this book and putting this book out, I definitely want people to look back and be able to say, wow, I really like the way she made me feel, or I really like the way that she was able to help, whether it was inspiring somebody to write an email better or whether it was helping them through, a challenge with their business. I just want them to be able to look back and say that I've added value in a positive way. So that is the biggest message that I want. And even with the book, the book wasn't sort of a ploy to make money and to get more clients. I put the book out because I was struggling and it was okay to admit that I needed a little bit of motivation. And I want other people who are walking down this path to not feel as though they're in it alone and that there are other people just like us that are walking down the same path and that there's camaraderie in numbers.
Awesome, nicely said, and
Yeah.
thank you for that message. And good luck to all your book sales and all your other engagements with other people on speaking and promoting
Oh,
and all that kind of stuff. Very, very exciting things. So congratulations on that. Before
thank
I let
you.
you go, I do have five quick rapid fire questions for you. Give me the first thing that comes to mind. You're stranded on a deserted island, one food to eat for the rest of your life, but there's no consequence. So you're not gonna get out of shape. You're not gonna feel sick. You could eat that for the rest of your life. What would it be?
Fried tofu.
Ooh, never heard that one yet. Hollywood calls and goes, "Hey, Julie, we love your story. Very, very inspirational. We would love to take your story and your book and create a biopic. Who would you cast to play you?"
This is great. Jennifer Aniston or Reese Witherspoon, morning show, but like their morning show persona. So like definitely more of that persona, not like the girl next door or anything like that. But yes, those two would be fantastic.
Awesome. I think you thought about that before because
I have.
that's the fastest response I've ever gotten for that answer. All right, so all right, Reese and Jennifer shows up at your door and goes, "Well, we're both trying to get this role. We need you to decide which one." So you go, "You know what? I got the perfect night planned. We'll have some fun. We'll get to know each other. And at the end of the night, I'm going to choose which one." So
Uh-oh.
what does that night look like to you? And because you gave me two people,
Shoot.
what are you doing to test so that you can find out which one you're going to pick?
Oh, now this is difficult. Okay. So the night will involve a dinner, probably at one of my favorite French restaurants where we can have martinis or a really great Sancerre. And it will involve conversation around what motivates them, what inspires them, what keeps them up at night. And whoever answers that in the most authentic way possible gets the job.
Nicely done. You're on a road trip, and in this car, for some reason or another, there's only one song that plays over and over again, hours and hours on end. And what's that one song you don't mind listening to without getting sick of it?
You might laugh, but I know this one. So this is on repeat when I do my long mileage, right? So when I'm running for an hour, I play Changes by Tupac.
Wow.
I told you it was going to be surprising. It's not Taylor Swift.
Not exactly the genre I was thinking of.
Nope.
And final question first, give me a number from 1 to 5.
3.
1, 2, 3. Sure. Headwind is the word.
Okay.
Okay. So if you had to use headwind as a metaphor for success, how is success like headwind?
Oh, wow. You couldn't have given me an easier word. Okay. So, how is success like headwind? Well, if you want to get from point A to point B, there's going to be a headwind, right? So you just have to navigate it as best you can.
Very well done. And it's not always going to be smooth sailing. So
No,
there's
it's
going to
not.
be challenges you're going to have to push through. Because if it
Yep.
was smooth sailing, if it was a tailwind, everybody would be.
That's different. That's why I was like, hey, the headwinds are the worst, right? That's when you get most of the turbulence. So, but yeah, I think it is a great metaphor for success, right? Because you do have to kind of weather the storm before you can really get from point A to point B.
And when you get to point B with a strong headwind, that's when you get
Yep.
all the applause.
That's right. That's right. That's when the accolades come.
I see
I
that.
love that.
So that's how success is like headwind. So please let us know, how do people get in touch with you? How do they get a copy of your book? What's the best way to contact you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, all of the information about who we are, what we do, even my agency, you can go to www.juliecroppgarelick.com. Dare to Become from the corner booth to the corner office is available on all major e-tailers online, as well as in stores. So, everything from Amazon to Barnes and Noble, and it's available worldwide. So, if you just Google Dare to Become and my name, it'll pop up and you can pick your favorite bookshop.
Awesome. And any final words from you?
No, I just want to thank you for having me on as a guest and for sharing such great content with all of the listeners and motivating all of us, right, to just be a little bit more successful. So thank you for that.
Awesome. Well, thank you for your time. Thank you for your stories, your wisdom, and all that great stuff that you shared. So thank you very much. Everybody out there, make sure you connect with Julie, get a copy of her book, give her some feedback, share your stories with her. I'm sure she'll be very, very excited to hear feedback from you. And of course, connect with her on her expertise. And also, you have a YouTube channel. You have some content on there as well. So
I
check
do.
that out. So until next time, she's Julie. My name is Fong. Today is the day to log your peak potential. See you later.